Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A lot of controversy surrounding the opening ceremony of the Paris Summer Games. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will explain. Emergency officials say 70% of the town of Jasper has been saved as firefighters continue to battle blazes in the national park. And Colehurst celebrated its summer festival over the weekend, Miners' Days. BCN's Heidi Echevarria will have the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Officials with Parks Canada say crews battling fires in Jasper National Park are busy on multiple fronts. The agency says military personnel are mopping up spot fires on the northwest side of the town site. It also says, as of Sunday night, a 30-centimeter sprinkler line was nearing completion. Temperatures are expected to linger in the mid-20s this week, so Jasper officials say it is vital to keep making progress. As for the town of Jasper itself, emergency officials say 70% of the town's structures have been saved, including the hospital, schools, and water treatment services. Alberta's Emergency and Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis says there are a number of firefighters from various jurisdictions who are helping out to battle the blazes in Jasper.
Officials at all levels continue to work together to protect everything that we can and, of course, to support evacuees. I commend wildland firefighters who are working tirelessly to prevent the fire from reaching our town sites throughout Alberta. The Alberta Emergency Management Agency has helped the municipality request structural firefighters from Hinton, Edmonton, and 32 other municipalities, plus Lakeland College, and industrial firefighters from across the province as it relates to Jasper. I assure you that we have made efforts to mobilize every resource available to bring relief and support to the community. The Provincial Emergency Coordination Centre is now at a level 4 activation to ensure full coordination across the provincial government. Our staff helped arrange staging grounds, meeting points, hotels for all those involved in the situation on the ground.
More financial help will be going to those who lost so much in Jasper. The provincial and federal governments will be matching all donations to the Canadian Red Cross's 2024 Alberta Wildfires Appeal. That means every dollar donated will become $3 to support those most impacted by the wildfires in Jasper and across the province. The donation matching will be for 30 days retroactive to July the 25th. According to Alberta Wildfire, there is still currently 124 active wildfires burning here in the province. Outside of Jasper National Park, there are 17 burning in the Peace River Forest area and around 15 around the Fort McMurray region. Meanwhile, in British Columbia, hundreds of British Columbians remain on evacuation order as more than 360 wildfires continue to burn in that province. Those who are ready to leave at a moment's notice include residents in the village of Slocan, a community of around 380 people located in southeastern British Columbia. According to Environment Canada, there's a good chance of showers in the area on Monday. Emergency officials say there are more than 1,400 people fighting the wildfires in British Columbia right now. Alberta government officials say they're doing more to protect the health and safety of kids in licensed childcare facilities. The province launched the Food Safety and Licensed Facility-Based Childcare Review Panel. It's in response to the number of childcare facilities in Calgary that faced a devastating E. coli outbreak that impacted so many families. Premier Smith talks about more in the report from the panel.
The review panel produced a report with 12 primary recommendations and 27 sub-recommendations for strengthening food safety in Alberta's licensed childcare facilities and the kitchens that serve them. These recommendations include promoting a culture of food safety, making improvements to legislation and inspection systems for food safety, and establishing new major investigations protocols with consequences for operators who've been found to have repeat violations, and supporting better system alignment and integration in our food safety system.
We'll be enjoying lots of sunshine again today in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, it looks like we may be back into the 30-plus temperatures as we hit midweek.
Yeah, it's going to be another hot one this week. Could see a bit of a haze just like we did today. Also some windy conditions. Tonight looking at partly cloudy skies, clearing, and also a bit windy. So we're looking at 20 to 40 winds. And then as we get into Tuesday, we've got that sun and cloud, warm conditions, high of 27 degrees. Could see those winds back again. And then it looks like we got a long weekend ahead of us. So I will be back later in the show to tell you how those first days of August are shaping up for us. Hal?
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Many people took to the streets in Paris to protest the opening ceremony recently held at the Paris Olympics. Part of the ceremony appeared to mock Da Vinci's The Last Supper using drag queens. Many believe it was a slap in the face to Christianity. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says many were really upset over this.
To stick it to more than half the world in something, again, a show that children are watching, people are watching together as families, again, bringing together all the religions of the world, all the cultures of the world. I mean, how many countries were presented and featured, and thank God for that, right? We all celebrate. I mean, in a time of war and division, we celebrate the Olympics.
Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have more on the Paris Games, including details of 3 Israeli athletes who received death threats. That's coming up in the second half of our show. Canadian swimmer Summer McIntosh took home a gold medal at the Paris Olympics. She became the first Canadian woman to ever win the 400-meter medley. The 17-year-old from Toronto beat the American runner-up by 2 body lengths. Earlier on Monday, Canadian Krista Deguchi from Lethbridge scored a first-place medal in women's judo, and Nathan Zombor-Murray and Rylan Weens won bronze in men's synchronized 10-meter diving. Congratulations. The Canadian Olympic Committee, alongside Canada Soccer, are appealing FIFA's 6-point penalty placed on the Canadian women's Olympic soccer team. The penalty is the result of the spy controversy when some of the Canadian women's soccer team used a drone to spy on the New Zealand team practicing. FIFA issued the penalty, the equivalent of 2 wins in the group stage, alongside a fine on Canada Soccer and the suspension of 3 coaching staff members, including head coach Beverly Priestman. COC issued in a statement that the sanction unfairly punishes the athletes who had no part of the scandal. Despite the penalty, Canada's hopes of moving to the quarterfinals are still alive after big wins against both New Zealand and France. Canada Sports Minister Carla Qualtrough says her government is withholding some of Canada Soccer's funding following the spying scandal that rocked the women's soccer team.
That Priestman just recently released a statement apologizing to Canada and the team.
Yeah.
Do you accept her apology?
I certainly do on behalf of Canadians, but there's still got to be consequences for what happened. So that's why we made the decision this morning as a government to suspend funding to Canada Soccer for money that we give them related to the coaching position, the coaches that have been sanctioned. So if a coach can't coach, they shouldn't be given money from the government of Canada, from the people of Canada.
South of the border, the U.S. presidential election is coming up in November. Political experts say this has been a historic month leading up to the very big day. As we hear in this next report, a new race is taking shape with new candidates, along with a new focus and outlook for both the Republicans and Democrats.
This has been an extraordinary month in presidential politics without precedent in modern history. On June 27th, a seemingly stable race was focused in Atlanta, where President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump were meeting for their first of 2 scheduled debates. But what we saw on that stage completely rocked the election. President Biden's performance was so poor that from within his own party, pressure began to build for him to abandon his reelection effort. On July 13th, there was an assassination attempt on live television on Donald Trump's life. The former president of the United States, potential future president, came within centimeters of being shot and killed on national television. And 2 days later, we see him triumphantly preside over his own Republican convention. He's riding high, appoints J.D. Vance as his running mate, accepts his party's nomination coming out of Milwaukee, looking like almost a certain winner in November. And then just days later, after resisting pressure and digging in, after Joe Biden said, "I'm not going anywhere, I am going to run again, I am going to win," he shocks the nation and steps aside by abandoning his campaign and yielding to Vice President Kamala Harris, who within days raises $100 million plus and secures the delegates necessary to become the Democratic nominee, and it completely resets the race. I think it would be irresponsible for anyone to think that it makes Harris a favorite or calls it even. I think the takeaway heading into kind of the final 3-month stretch is simply that the race is reset, and it's back to this baseline that we saw in 2016 and 2020, which ultimately was a very tight race in the handful of battleground states that decide the Electoral College.
Nicolas Maduro was declared the winner of Venezuela's disputed presidential election on Monday. That is 24 hours after both he and the country's political opposition both claimed victory. The National Electoral Council declared Maduro's victory. Officials delayed the release of vote tallies after proclaiming Maduro the winner with 51% of the vote. His closest competition was retired diplomat Edmundo Gonzalez. Gonzalez, in an interview, said, quote, "Venezuelans and the entire world know what happened." He called on his supporters to remain calm and called on the government to avoid stoking conflict. Many frustrated Venezuelans, however, took to the streets, lighting items on fire, showing their frustration with the election result. Israel has been rocked by a rocket attack at a soccer field over the weekend that claimed the lives of 12 Israeli children. Israel has blamed Iran-backed Hezbollah, but Iran has denied any involvement. TBN Israel correspondent Yair Pinto has more.
Today, we send prayers and love to our Jewish brothers as 12 children and boys ages 10 to 20 were killed Saturday afternoon by a direct hit from a rocket that exploded on a soccer field near a playground in Majd al-Shams. Over 30 other people were wounded in the attack, with several hospitalized in serious condition. This incident marks the highest number of civilian casualties in Israel in a single day since October 7. Israeli leaders now have some serious planning to do. The response to this attack must be harsh, or Hezbollah will feel emboldened to attack more civilian communities inside Israel.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says his government will be purchasing 5 police helicopters rather than leasing them. The total price tag will be around $100 million, more than what the March budget allowed for in leasing 4 choppers.
Today, we're delivering on our promise, outlined in this year's budget, to invest $134 million to purchase new helicopters to help fight auto theft and organized crime in Ottawa and the GTA. As part of this investment in new Joint Air Support Unit, the OPP will acquire 2 new H-135 helicopters to provide support to Ottawa and the Toronto Police Services. In addition, 3 helicopters will be purchased, owned and operated by Durham, Halton, Peel Regional Police Services to support current patrols and improve response times.
The Streets Alive mission here in Lethbridge has put out an urgent call for clothing donations. The mission's People in Need, or PIN Bank, makes a wide variety of clothing available to those who are in need. Officials say the bank is low on a number of items, including hats, shorts, tank tops, hoodies, and especially new underwear. The mission's Chief Development Officer, Jennifer Lepko, says the PIN Bank typically helps to provide for up to 60 people per day who need clothing. As for underwear, she says they distribute around 100 pairs each and every week.
Something that many of us take for granted is having a clean pair of underwear, and so that's one thing that we do purchase a fair amount of. It's probably the biggest cost of the entire program is the purchasing of underwear. Our PIN Clothing Bank is one of our Restoration of Dignity programs. So when people are struggling and living on the streets, they often don't feel very good about themselves. So this is one of those programs that help them feel a little better. They, again, we take for granted being able to put on clean clothes, clean socks, clean underwear in the morning. They always can't, and so this gives them that opportunity, and just putting on some fresh clean clothes makes a huge difference. This, alongside with our salon, for example, to have their hair washed and done, makes them feel better about themselves. And when you feel better about yourselves, you do make better choices. Typically, it changes the way you behave. So we really want people to come and know that they're human, and we recognize them as human, and that we need to take care of them. And this is why we offer this.
Streets Alive mission accepts donations of all clothing, but officials say seasonal items are especially important. Cash donations are also accepted and are typically used to purchase new underwear. Donations can be dropped off at the Streets Alive mission downtown or at the repurposed donation center. The folks in southern Alberta were treated to a very special event over the weekend, the Colehurst Miners' Days. BCN's Heidi Echevarria was there to capture all of the color of the parade and filed this special report.
The long-awaited day for residents of Colehurst finally arrived. Miners' Day. Families came out to enjoy all of the color and festivities along with the parade. Not only Colehurst, but Lethbridge and other nearby communities also joined in. For children, candies and car attraction were the favorites.
We live in Lethbridge now. We come here to visit the parade and enjoy it.
I like the candies and the cars.
I don't like the fire trucks.
I like the police.
Yeah, same. I like the sound of the wee woo wee woo. Probably the police car.
Colehurst Mayor Lindsay Montina says it is rewarding to see the community enjoying all the activities that Miners' Day has to offer.
So if you got here early, you might have seen people setting up their chairs early to get their spots because they know where the prime candy spots are. And so they're always so excited. They go to the pancake breakfast and then come right over to the parade and have a lot of fun. We had tons of people come through for that. And then the parade was awesome. It was so nice to see all the different people along the route and be able to hand out candy. And sometimes we're a little bit of a hidden gem. And so sometimes these events bring new people here that we haven't had come out before. And they learn more about our community, get to experience the amazing parade, as well as go to our spray park and check out all the great things we have happening. So in the parade today, we had a bunch of municipalities come out from all over the place. And so we're so excited when they come and visit us, and we love going to visit them as well.
Once the parade was over, the meeting point for continuing the fun was Imperial Meadows Park. There, children had several attractions to spend their energy on. For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echevarria.
Have to give that train a whirl. That looks like a lot of fun. Well, it was a beautiful start to the work week here in southwestern Alberta. The warm temperatures will be sticking around a little while longer. A full look at the weather pictures coming up. We got fairly close to 30 degrees once again today in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, load up on the sunscreen since there should be lots of sunshine and hot temperatures for the remainder of the week.
Yeah, it's about to be very hot again soon, particularly as we get into that holiday weekend. We're going to jump back into those 30s from the 20s up until Tuesday there. 27 still for a high, which is relatively seasonal right now. The average high is 26, so we're just above that for tomorrow. And then we're going to jump into the 30s again on Wednesday, up to 30 degrees, 33 on Thursday, 29 again on Friday, up to 34 on Saturday, and then back to 31 degrees on a Sunday. So mainly hot, dry conditions all week. Like I was saying, that average high for this time of year, 26, average low, 11, 37. That was our high temperature on this day. That happened back in 2007. And back in 1963, Lethbridge saw its coldest day on record for this day, which was only 4 degrees. So sun rose this morning just before 6 a.m. right at 5:59, and looking at a sunset this evening at 9:16, giving us 15 hours and 17 minutes of daylight. Okay, so on the west coast tomorrow, we could see a little bit of moisture, looking at some smoke in the morning in Victoria and 30% chance of morning showers as well. High of 18 degrees, 24 high in Vancouver. Also 30% chance of showers. Clear skies expected tomorrow in Edmonton, high of 26, and a high of 25 tomorrow in Calgary with a 30% chance of showers. Could also see risk of thunderstorms there. As we get to the rest of the prairies here, 25 for a high in Saskatoon, mix of sun and cloud. Regina looking at 40 winds, but high of 29, clear skies, and 32 degrees is the expected high tomorrow in Winnipeg with clear skies, and also could see some windy conditions there as well. As we look to the central part of the country here, could see some moisture in Toronto, looking at a chance of showers, risk of thunderstorms, 28 for the high there. Very warm day in Ottawa expected tomorrow, 31, and clear skies, and as well in Montreal, also 31 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. As we get into Atlantic Canada, we're going to see a little bit more showers. A 30% chance of showers in Fredericton, that risk of a thunderstorm there, 26 for a high, 25 the expected high tomorrow in Halifax with a 60% chance of showers, 26 for the high in Charlottetown, and 28 in St. John's. St. John's looking also at that heat warning in effect through Tuesday, but could be a little bit cooler with the onshore winds that are 30 gusting to 50 kilometers per hour. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
McDonald's saw a quarterly drop in same-store sales for the first time since the pandemic. The burger chain says sales dropped 1% globally in the second quarter, a decline not seen since the fourth quarter of 2020. McDonald's warned in April that consumers weary of inflation were looking for better value and affordability. It introduced a meal deal at U.S. restaurants last month, but that was too late to affect second quarter results, which saw overall revenue come in flat at $6.5 billion U.S. Fast food brands and convenience store chains say cold beverages are one of their biggest growth categories, even during the colder winter months. Executives at Tim Hortons, the owner of Circle K and Starbucks, have all reported increased sales. They say fruit drinks, frappuccinos, ice caps, and carbonated beverages are the big ticket sellers. Marketing experts say it appears as though young consumers are driving the increase in sales. Unlike their older counterparts, such as myself, who switch back and forth depending on the season, younger people reach for smoothies and other frosted drinks year-round. The French government confirms a number of telecommunications lines were hit hard by acts of vandalism overnight. Fiber liners along with fixed and mobile lines were impacted across the nation. Organizers for the Paris Games, however, say their operations have not been impacted. France's second-largest telecommunications company says it kept the scale of the impact low as it made repairs or workarounds in many areas while other companies are working on fixes. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 35 points to 22,779. The Dow was also down 49 points to 40,539. The S&P 500 was up 4 points to 5,463, and the Nasdaq was up 12 points to 17,370. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $1.35 to 75.81 US dollars per barrel. Natural gas was up 2 cents to $2.04 US. Gold was down $11.84 to 2,377 US an ounce, and silver was up a penny to 27.95 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.57 per bushel, barley is at $5.97 per bushel, canola is at $14.35, and corn is at $7.19 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was down $1.60 to $186.98. Feeder cattle August contract was down $3.28 to $256.43, and lean hogs August contract was down $2.03 to $91.45. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 72 cents US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Canadian swimmer Summer McIntosh took home a gold medal at the Paris Olympics. She became the first Canadian woman to ever win the 400-meter medley. The 17-year-old from Toronto beat the American runner-up by 2 body lengths. Earlier on Monday, Canadian Krista Deguchi, who's from Lethbridge, scored a first-place medal in women's judo. Congratulations. And Nathan Zomber-Murray and Rylan Weens won bronze in men's synchronized 10-meter diving. Congratulations to all the athletes. 3 Israeli athletes' lives have been threatened at the Paris Olympics. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have details for us momentarily. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. You know, there was a lot of controversy surrounding the opening ceremony at the Paris Summer Olympics. Part of the ceremony involved what appeared to be a mockery of Da Vinci's Last Supper painting involving drag queens. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us from Los Angeles. Lisa, many people felt like this portion of the opening ceremony was a real slap in the face to Christians all around the globe.
Yeah, of course, there's been a huge uproar about this and very in poor taste. I mean, of all the things that could be depicted in terms of art, dance, music, to kick off sports games that bring the whole world together why would you try to do something to stick it to more than half the world in something, again, a show that children are watching, people are watching together as families, again, bringing together all the religions of the world, all the cultures of the world. I mean, how many countries were presented and featured, and thank God for that, right? We all celebrate. I mean, in a time of war and division, we celebrate the Olympics because it's a time where everyone can come together. Ironically, there is a rule where you cannot have any sort of political or activism on your uniforms. There was actually some uproar about that too, because they felt like the Palestinians had rockets, and a lot of them wearing keffiyehs, another political symbol. Whereas, for example, the Israelis could not wear their yellow ribbons that just signifies the return of, bring home the hostages. So a lot of different, where is it allowed and where is it not allowed? It's like a pick and choose where there's no consistency, but it only serves leftist views and policies. Now, in response to this, the Olympic Committee said, well, we only wanted to basically promote tolerance. Imagine that, Hal. Tolerance by putting on this spectacle. And of course, if anyone was offended, well, we're sorry about that. So basically it was, half measure, apology that says you shouldn't be offended, because if you were really tolerant, you wouldn't be offended. And if you are intolerant and you were offended, well, then in that case, we're sorry. Really, really in poor taste. A lot of people said, France's response was, well, this is France. Well, that makes a lot of sense because yes, this is France. And, it's really a shame, again, that they had this opportunity to bring the world together, all eyes on France, all eyes on the Olympics, families watching, and they really blew it. It was in poor taste. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't even artistically pleasing. I can understand why a lot of people are upset.
And what did it have to do with sport? We're celebrating amateur sports here, so it really didn't make any sense. Now, Lisa, there were reports that following the controversial opening ceremony, that some of Paris allegedly went dark due to a power outage. Now, several users took to X posting videos showing pictures of the city left in the darkness, except for one church in the background. Nothing was confirmed by city officials, however.
Right. So there's investigations going on into a few different plots here. So let's break this all down. Before the Olympics started in France, there were already threats that there will be attacks on the Olympics, terror threats, obviously security threats geared towards, of course, the Israeli team, but others as well. This is not just about Israel. Obviously, it's about the West. It's about the Olympics being, again, symbolic of the West. It's in France. Again, we know that they have a jihadi problem. So there were threats. Actually, Israel's government came in and said, we're going to tell you that we think that there are very credible threats. So you might want to go deeper into your security apparatuses and beef it up a bit. There were direct threats that we are certain about that are being investigated against the Israeli team. But what you're talking about, perhaps could have been a hack and could have been either a third-party nation or a group, and that is being investigated right now. They do believe that foul play is at work here. Why would France go dark? Why would things, shut down and be inoperable? We're waiting to find out what that is. But I think many of us can take a wild guess as to what's going on here.
Yeah, let's circle back to those threats here. So 3 members of Israel's Olympic squad were sent threatening emails?
Yes. And I mean, hopefully they just remain at emails. If you remember, there was, the Olympics of in Munich, where there were terror threats against the Israeli team that weren't taken seriously, and members of the team were killed. I mean, think about an athlete traveling to a different part of the world to show off their athletic ability and to compete with other members of the globe, and for their lives to be taken because of jihadism that is not taken seriously. Now, imagine 50 years later, the same teams' lives are in jeopardy because of these threats. So France's authorities have told us that they will take these threats seriously and they're investigating them further. But really, it's horrible. If you think about this, there were also games where there were signs where, Israelis or genocide and things like that. You can see that all over the web, where they're being taunted, where they're being threatened, where their lives are in jeopardy. How can they really focus on their sport and their game and their performance when you can't even sleep at night thinking, well, there might be an attack on my life or my teammate's life just by being here and competing here?
Lisa, a rocket attack that killed 12 children on a soccer field in the Golan Heights has left Israel shaken. The Israeli military says it was carried out by Tehran-backed Hezbollah, but in a statement, of course, on Sunday, Iran denied any wrongdoing whatsoever.
Yeah, not surprising, right? The mullahs in the Islamic Republic wash their hands of all responsibility, but many believe that the Hezbollah war, which is the next front in the war that Israel has to fight, Hezbollah, of course, being the best endowed proxy of Iran's regime that is about 42 years old, started in the beginning of this regime taking over Iran and really giving it whole bunch of missiles, short, medium, long range drones. They are equipped. They're well trained. They have 30 to 50,000 fighters. They have 150 to 200,000 missiles pointed towards Israel and ready to start this war. So the provocations that we're seeing, each one is predicted to be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, the catalyst that begins this war. And of course, myself and many others had predicted that there will be a war this summer between Israel and Hezbollah, that Iran's regime had calculated that they will allow them to fight Hamas, basically a war of attrition, let the Israelis tire out, in their fight against Hamas, and then we'll bombard them with our number one proxy, Hezbollah from the north. This Druze community was targeted in this attack where 12 children were killed in a soccer field, and many people around the world who are advocating are saying, why is it that Arab children on this side of the border inside Israel are not advocated for, and the Arab children on the other side are advocated for? So it's something that the mainstream media, they have blurred all the headlines, making it look like it's one way and not the other. But this was a Hezbollah attack that killed 12 Druze Arab children inside of Israel.
Yeah, very sad indeed. Lisa, Turkey's President Erdogan is threatening to invade Israel over the war in Gaza. He says, quote, "We must be very strong so that Israel cannot do these things to Palestine." So let me ask you, if Turkey does attack, could Israel receive more support from the United States?
Oh, it's such a tangled web, right? So Turkey all of a sudden, and not Turkey, I want to say Erdogan, because he is a complete Islamist. He has played both sides, meaning the East and the West, to get support. We call him a frenemy here in the United States because when it serves them, they become a NATO nation, they become Western, they become, they want to play with the big boys on the global stage. But then they're also, he wants to take the country back to Islamist ways and really promote a lot more Sharia law inside Turkey, etc. Now he's saying, wait, I'm relevant too. I want street credit too. I want to be a part of this too. Wait for me. So now threatening Israel to get involved in this war, yet another front for Israel. Now let's talk about all the different fronts that Israel is fighting. Obviously Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, obviously Gaza and Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, of course Syria and Iraq where the Islamic Republic insurgencies are, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Palestinian Islamic Jihad in that region as well. And now you can add Turkey to the list because that is their way of staying relevant and joining the club.
A hostage who was released by Hamas in a November deal, Lisa, she talked about the tortures that she endured. Maya Regev said Gazan doctors poured chlorine, acid, and vinegar into a gunshot wound, ignoring her pleas to stop.
Right. So, this goes against a lot of what we're reading in the mainstream media, that the Israeli hostages were given cake and tea and had a great time while they were being held hostage. They are hostages. They're being held hostage by terrorists who among them in their society, their journalists are terrorists. That's what we've learned. There are, UNRWA, which is their NGO, the main humanitarian organization funded by the UN, funded by Canadian and American taxpayer money. They are the terrorists that are embedded in that organization. They're doctors here torturing these Israeli hostages. We don't need, a PhD in regional studies to understand that these are terrorists who are looking to torture and to intimidate and to kill these individuals solely because they captured them from Israel. And they're not just Israelis, by the way, Hal. I think you and I have spoken about this many times. There are still up to 5 Americans, maybe 8, that they believe are alive and being held by Hamas. It's almost been a year. Why should Hamas, a terrorist organization, be holding American hostages and the American government do nothing about it? And of course, many other nationals as well who were caught in this crossfire and taken as hostages by Hamas.
House Republicans are promoting a bill that would make foreign students who support and participate with terrorist groups ineligible to remain in the United States. Lisa, this was in response to pro-Hamas protesters who brought chaos to Washington recently.
Yes, and these were the protests in particular that were against Bibi Netanyahu's speech that released maggots and all kinds of disgusting critters into the hotel where he was speaking, and actually burned an American flag outside of the main train station in Washington, D.C. I think it's pretty fair to say if you're burning an American flag and you're here as a guest in the United States studying or doing whatever that it is that you're doing, you shouldn't really be here. You should decide on your own that you don't want to be here. But if you still are here, you shouldn't be allowed to be here. So I think it has a lot of bipartisan support, and I think it's going to continue to grow in sentiment. When the Americans understand that this is a threat to them, not just free speech as it is often chalked up to be, then there will be more people on board.
Speaking of support, it appears as though Kamala Harris is receiving a lot of it right now as the Democratic nominee. How close is she to actually securing the nomination?
Quite close. Look, the Democrats were stuck in this awkward position to either support her because of this honeymoon phase where she announced and she gained all this momentum and was able to raise a ton of money. A lot of women coming out to support her. A lot of minorities love the fact that she would be the first African American, South Asian female president. So she would be a lot of superlatives. I spoke to a lot of people last night. I was at a political event where they feel as though this is just a honeymoon phase and the momentum will actually slow down. Now, it's interesting because we're coming up on the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, the week of the 19th of August. So less than a month away. There will probably be more of a momentum growing into that. But there are also many Democrats who think she doesn't have what it takes. She doesn't have the experience. She doesn't have, or her record in her experience is so radical that it doesn't really suit the rest of the nation. She's very California in that regard. If you've watched her videos as vice president, she is a nervous speaker, doesn't really come across as somebody who's well prepared or seasoned in policy. So she will have an uphill battle. But right now she is riding this wave, riding this momentum, this honeymoon phase of her being celebrated across the board, getting endorsements from many, many prominent Democrats.
So what are the polls saying right now? I know a lot of the support for Trump was shored up following the assassination attempt. Republicans are very strong in support of Trump. And now the Democrats seem to be rallying behind Kamala Harris right now. But what are the polls saying when it comes to who's actually going to win?
Yeah, actually, so if you're asking me today, the polls are very close and maybe even showing Kamala in the lead. Now, this will change, and a lot of people, again, last night I spoke to a lot of people who told me polls don't even look at polls until after Labor Day. We have to wait until the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, happens, and then the momentum dies down, and we'll see where things fall. And again, a lot of what you and I hear, Hal, is from the media. The media represents, New York and Los Angeles and Chicago. Does it really represent Pennsylvania and Michigan and Ohio and places where the average American worker lives? People who have to pay for groceries, people who have to pay for gas, people who are fed up with a lot of the status quo. I don't know if they will have the appetite to continue these Democrat policies for another 4 years with Kamala. But we will wait and see. There is so much to happen between now and Election Day. There will be an October surprise. There always is. So, there have been so many surprises that I don't think an October surprise can really take us somewhere. Really, maybe I'm wrong, and we'll definitely be surprised. But there will be many twists and turns.
Could we maybe see a potential upset, speaking of surprises, and maybe Kamala Harris doesn't secure the nomination?
Perhaps. Look, there's always an opportunity to do that with the DNC. The issue with that is right now they don't have enough time. And that is what a lot of Democrats, I think that was their calculus, right? To say, well, we would perhaps have, fresh blood, somebody who hasn't been, vice president, whose name has been associated with the current administration, maybe somebody who's more seasoned, maybe somebody who's a bit more moderate, because I think the pendulum has swung a bit too far to the left. But again, they don't have enough time. They have to fundraise. They have to get their name out there. They wouldn't be able to take over the Biden funds for that candidate. So I think in the interest of just getting to November, the Democrats may feel that they have to keep her as the candidate.
Interesting times lie ahead, Lisa. Political reporter and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks again for joining us from Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, Lethbridge and southern Alberta have a fascinating, rich history to look back upon, and we perhaps don't take enough time to reflect upon it, but today's guest is going to help us do just that. Lorian Johansson is the Vice President of the Lethbridge Historical Society. Welcome to Bridge City News, Lorian. Great to have you on today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I always love to talk about Lethbridge's history.
Awesome. Okay, well, with that said, maybe give our viewers a brief snapshot of what your organization is all about. It's not just Lethbridge history, right? But southern Alberta, all of southern Alberta?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the Lethbridge Historical Society is a chapter of the Historical Society of Alberta. Our chapter covers the southern Alberta region, sort of from just south of Calgary down to the border. So it does encompass quite a lot of southern Alberta, including all of the small towns. They are free to access our resources, and we do a lot of work with them as well. We do tend to focus on Lethbridge because that's where we're based, but we do also cover a lot of other things in the region.
Okay, great. Well, maybe give us an idea of what takes place at a typical meeting or gathering of the Lethbridge Historical Society.
Well, we have several different options as far as gatherings. On the fourth Tuesday of every month during September through April, we host a general meeting for our membership where we conduct a little bit of business and then we move into a presentation format. We invite guest speakers from all different walks of life come and speak to our members and guests about things that are relevant or interesting. We've had horticulture, and we've had how to plant a victory garden in your front yard or backyard. We've had it was fascinating, yes, what kind of vegetables you can grow in southern Alberta that you can then turn around and eat to be a little bit more self-sustaining and environmentally conscious. That was a really great one. We've talked about our plaques and monuments project. Anything that really would be fascinating or interesting to our membership and to the general public. So that's one of the ways. We do also conduct tours, walking tours of the city and local area. Some of them are the Downtown History and Beer Tour, which most people are familiar with. That was initiated by the LHS here. And we do some for general public. We do some for the membership. So we have a lot of tours that take place throughout the year. We have several coming up actually over the next few months. And then the other thing is to join the executive council and sit on the board with the rest of the team. So that happens on Monday. So there's several different ways to get involved.
It sounds like it. So obviously this is something people can join in. How can people maybe join up for your group?
The easiest way is to attend one of the general meetings and sign up for your membership with one of the executive that's there. We do also have a website, lethbridgehistory.org, and memberships are available through there, as well as a contact us form. So if you have questions, you can certainly submit an email request and somebody will be able to guide you through becoming a member.
Okay, so why don't we begin with the name of the city? So I think a lot of people assume the name Lethbridge stems from the famous bridge that spans the coulees, but that isn't necessarily the case now, is it?
It's not at all the case, actually. Lethbridge was named after William Lethbridge. He was the president and largest shareholder of the Northwestern Coal and Navigation Company. You know how the NMAX Center is named after the sponsor, NMAX? Lethbridge is something similar to that. He got the city named after him because of his money that he invested into the company. He never actually visited Lethbridge at all, not even once.
Oh, wow. Well, that's disappointing. So it all comes down to money, right?
Unfortunately, that's the case.
Yeah.
It has been for a long time.
It's a little bit more of a romantic notion to think it's about the bridge, really.
Sure.
I can see why the rumor got started.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense, but it's completely a coincidence that it's Lethbridge and we have a bridge.
And then we become Bridge City. Yes, I know. That's so interesting. So, I mean, speaking of the bridge, that iconic high-level bridge is often referred to as the longest in the world. And there are, of course, longer bridges elsewhere, but I believe it's
There are.
still the longest of its specific type in the world. Can you maybe share a little bit about the history of that bridge?
Of course, the bridge is in fact the longest for its height and style in the world. Nobody has built anything that's longer and higher of the same style trestle
And
bridge.
that would be like a trestle bridge. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
It was announced in 1906 and completed 3 years later. It is still the largest single railway structure in Canada. It was put into place to shorten the trip to Fort Macleod. Instead of having to go down and around the river valley, the bridge was put in place so that they could just skip over the top and shave off several hours at least of their train journey. The walls on the side of the bridge, you've seen them there, they're to make sure that the trains don't get pushed off by our wind, our beautiful wind in southern
Oh my
Alberta.
gosh, that's
It,
scary.
it's a
I didn't even think that's a
safety.
possibility, but now that you said it, that's scary.
Well, the wind can get pretty powerful down here in southern Alberta, so they put those measures in place. The construction of the bridge is actually considered a national historic event. Over 100 men worked on the construction of the bridge. There were a few deaths during the construction. Safety measures for workers were not what they are now. There is a very famous photograph of two men leaping off the last structure to be lowered into place. They were promptly fired after that. They did not die, but they were fired for their shenanigans.
Oh my gosh, I think I have seen that picture, and they're jumping
Most
basically into
people
the
have,
river,
yeah.
right?
But they're jumping from the piece of steel off to the side of the
Yes,
bay.
where the
Yeah.
land is. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
So it's not as high as we think at that point, but
No,
still.
no.
Still, safety first, gentlemen. Come on, let's not give other people ideas, right?
In the early 1900s, they didn't have fall-safe harnesses. They didn't have
There
any
was
of
no
those
such
things.
thing as safety back then, basically.
That's right.
I
Which
get
may
it.
be one of the reasons why safety harnesses and whatnot were put into place
Yeah.
as we moved through the 19th and 20th centuries, because people did things like that. I don't know. That's just my speculation, but it makes sense.
There you go. Okay, so moving on from the bridge, we have a school named after, so we've got some other famous names here in town. So we have a school named after Nicholas Sharon and a hospital named after Sir Alexander Galt. And both were businessmen who started coal mines here. So to what degree did coal mining impact Lethbridge in the early years?
There were over 100 mines in the Lethbridge coal fields, somewhere between Picture Butte and McGrath. In 1919, we were the highest producing coal field in Canada. And it helped to determine where Lethbridge was built. It brought in industries such as Lethbridge Iron Works. It was a major employer, brought a lot of families to the area, and started other communities like Colehurst and Diamond City. Uh, it's almost impossible to quantify the importance of coal mining to our development. Uh, it it was the founding reason for Lethbridge's construction here. And then as we moved out of coal mining, that's when we moved into more of an agricultural community. But we definitely started as that industrial coal mining location. That's why the city sprang up where it did.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, in addition to that, Southern Alberta has a rich Indigenous history. So the River Valley has a park named Indian Battle Park, where Fort Whoop-Up is located. So maybe share a brief history about that.
The Indian Battle Park is the name that was chosen by City Council in the 1960s. And it specifically refers to a battle in the fall of 1870 between the Blackfoot Nations and the Cree Nations. It was a winter camping area protected from the weather and that. And where the high level bridge is now was a very natural crossing point in the river. We do have a book about the Indian battle that went on there, several different editions. But the story of how these two nations fought over rights to the land and the ability to camp there. It's much more than I could cover in such a short time, but that's why it's named that, because our Indigenous peoples camped there and wintered there to stay safe from the elements.
Yeah, and then of course, speaking of Indigenous people, people from around the world travel to Alberta specifically to visit Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. So for any viewers who have never heard about this or have ever been there, what is that all about?
Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump is it's a national historic site. It's a provincial heritage site and a World Heritage Site, all of which were designated through the 60s, late 60s into the early 80s. It's a place where the Indigenous peoples would drive the buffalo off the cliff in order to harvest them. It is definitely a fascinating interpretive center there. If you haven't been, I definitely recommend it. It's a very eye-opening look into how Indigenous people manage to hunt in such large capacities. And there are guides and books available online that give you a lot of the details of the history of the location. But it's one of our national heritage sites that we're very proud to be quite close to Lethbridge.
Yeah, I believe it's a UNESCO heritage site, isn't it? Yeah,
yes.
That's amazing. Okay, now, Lorian, you mentioned agriculture earlier, and of course that is a big part of southern Alberta, especially the sugar beet industry. So I believe that that also brought quite a few Japanese immigrants to our area. So maybe can you tell us a bit about that?
The sugar beet industry has been operating in Lethbridge to this day since the early 1900s. You are correct. Some Japanese immigrants moved here. They were recruited to work in the first factory in Raymond and in the beet fields. Some of these families their descendants are still in and around Lethbridge. During the Second World War, 2,500 of these Japanese Canadians were relocated here by the government to work in the beet fields. It was considered later in life, it was considered a human rights violation to uproot these families and move them here with no choice in the matter. The Canadian government did issue an official apology to the families in 1988, but those families did settle here, and some of them remain here to this day, at least parts of them. So the sugar beet industry has always been important to Lethbridge and agriculture, some for good reason, some for bad, obviously. I mean, history, we like to think of history as this happy, nostalgic style thing, but some of Canadian history is not pleasant and it's not nice. And we have to acknowledge that before we can move out of that cycle. They say history, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. So by studying history and the real, honest, nitty-gritty facts about it, perhaps we can avoid those sorts of things as we grow and develop as a society.
Yeah, the more you learn about it, the more you can avoid it. And yeah, exactly. It's fascinating though, Lorian. And moving on from there, Lethbridge, an area are also known for its history of irrigation canals. Much of that was put in place by our Mormon community. So that of course, has really influenced the culture of southern Alberta, hasn't it?
It has. Lethbridge and southern Alberta, heavily Mormon. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. They've brought a lot and contributed a lot. The agreement was made by Alexander Galt with the LDS Church so that their settlers would build canals, and then they received land and money as payment for their work. They were brought in because they came from Utah originally, where they were experts in dryland farming and the different skills required. And it was able to transform the area around Lethbridge to make more crops possible because we needed high dollar value crops to be able to be grown here. So that it was sort of they got to move to somewhere new and get land and money for it. we got the benefit of their dryland farming knowledge and irrigation.
I am learning so much here. It's fascinating.
Lethbridge is so rich in history and how all of these things that we see now still. We drive over irrigation canals and we see the sugar beet factories, and we go down to the park and we see the mine sites of 6 and 8, Galt Mine 6 and 8, that are still, the ruins are still there. And Lethbridge exists because these things were brought in, and this area of the world was made hospitable.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's awesome. Thanks so much again for being with us today. It looks like we're out of time, but we really appreciate having you on here, Lorian.
Well, thank you so much. I would just like to mention that we do have several members-only tours coming up in April, June, and October. So if you'd like to get involved with the bars and taverns or the murder mysteries of Lethbridge's past, please go on our website, get a membership, and then those tours will be open for our members. And we welcome members of the public to our general meetings, again, the fourth Tuesday of every month, usually at the community room in the public library.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Lorian. Very, very interesting. Great to have you on today.
Thank you again for the invitation.
Absolutely. Lorian Johansson is the Vice President of the Lethbridge Historical Society. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.